One of my favorite topics today. We're going to talk about cardiometabolic. So we are combining our architecture for the performance of the heart with the distribution of nutrients, right? The whole metabolic architecture, the pumping in and the extracting out is all through the heart and the blood system, right? So that's why we are combining cardio and metabolic. And we're going to look at, we're going to walk through the overall landscape for cardiometabolic issues. And then we're going to talk about some of the underlying dysfunctions and how we address some of that. Okay, so the focus today is for cardiometabolic issues. So where I want to start is with something Japanese. They call it Ikigai. Can you distribute this for me, please? So there are 4 things that drive what in French they call the raison d'être, right? The French call it raison d'être. Most people don't have a reason for being. They just are. And at the core of lifestyle is really your reason for being, right? That's really what drives lifestyle. It is your reason for being. And there are 4 things that drive your reason for being. Number 1 is mission, passion, profession, and vocation, right? That's how the Japanese define it. And look at, because the way I also define it is that you look at your passion and mission, like they tell you, you need to do the things that you love.
What a concept.
Yeah, the things that you love, right? Most people don't even love anything. That's one of the sadness about life. Some people don't love anything. They have never bothered. And then there is also the issue about the things that you're good at, right? And some people don't even know what they're good at. So life is a very interesting journey, right? And then what you're paid for, right? That is if you're a slave, like I tell my staff, right? Because there are 2 choices in life. You either be the slave or the master. The masters are the people who create the future. The slaves are the ones who support the master as they create the future. That's a choice we all have in life. To be a slave or to create our own futures. Or what the world needs. You see, so if you don't cover that whole space, right, there is no real, at the core, any reason for being. And that's why people get depressed, commit suicide, and exit. Because in essence, when you look at this overall force, so think about it. Where passion meets mission, we have delight and fullness, but not wealth. Delight and fullness, right? Where passion meets profession, we have satisfaction, but a feeling of uselessness. It's very interesting. Where profession meets vocation, we have comfortable but feeling of emptiness. And then where mission meets vocation, we have excitement, complacency, but that sense of uncertainty. So all these things really create this sense of us never really being there, but having that push to wake up in the morning and have vitality. So I wanted to start this class today with this at the core of how we talk about heart disease. I posted this on Facebook, so people who have been on my Facebook would have seen this picture already. Quickly, guys, quickly, that's it, so we can move on quick. Right, you'll see this picture that I posted on Facebook already. Because you know there's been a lot of debate about guns and all the other silly things that we spend a lot of time talking about, or knives. But look at the leading cause of death. So let's walk through this. Number one is heart and circulatory disorders. I don't hear people talking about this on TV every day. Number two is cancer. Number three is respiratory disorders. Number four is nervous system disorders. Number five is digestive disorders. Number six, number seven, and then we get to diabetes, and then where is murder and where is war, right? So the one really important issue about our lives is that we really focus on things that are really not important. Because what's the most important thing about us? Is being alive and being healthy, right? So let's start with that big overall premise that we want to live long, healthy, meaningful. I was going to add forever. Right, I was going to add forever. Well, who knows? We might get to that place where it is forever, right? So when we're thinking about a long, healthy, look at the big things that could actually kill us. That's what I want to focus on. Not on things that are like an illusion. Yes, you know something. Throughout history, there have always been crazy people who kill crazy people. And if we're unlucky and we're in the path of that, that's what life is. I really think we as individuals and communities need to focus on what is important. Let's look at the next page. I love this picture. I also posted this. And this was on my Facebook page. And it says that even young women are beginning to have heart disease. Young women. And it could be a lot of different things. You know that birth control pills actually affect hormones. Could be that, it could be diet, could be a lot of things. Children are already starting puberty at 7, 8, right? In the old stress. Oh yeah, imagine being stressed when you're young. I wasn't. My only stress was passing my exams. I didn't think that was stressful. But I can look at my kids now, I can imagine how stressed it is, right? And then look at that other picture I put on Facebook, the very fascinating one that Rick loved so much. And Rick was wondering, no, and Rick was like, why am I not there on that line? But we should put further, right? But look at that line. Isn't that the sad story about American culture? That we prefer pills. And then also, that's why the whole debate about healthcare is about pills and surgery.
And look at the size of them.
Yeah, well, oh, I didn't see that. Rick didn't point that out to me in his comment on that, right? But isn't that amazing? And I'm worried because we will have to pay taxes for that, and we don't have enough children. No wonder we want open borders so that more people. So, but the other day at the workshop, we were having this conversation, and I thought we should enjoy it today. How long does your cells actually last? Oh, my hair, that's the beautiful one. It grows 0.35 millimeters a day. That's why I cut it every 2 to 3 weeks, right?
I think also with stem cells it grows quicker.
Yeah, I think so. My nails too, and everything is growing. Look at your wisdom tooth enamel. But let me look at the interesting ones, right? Toenails, 1 millimeter per month. Yeah. It's interesting that your fingernails and your toenails grow at different rates.
Yeah, fingernails grow faster.
I know that 1.1 millimeter per day, but this one is 1 millimeter per month, right? It's interesting, right? Look at fat storage cells. They are replaced every 10 years. You were thinking that they should be replaced every 2 months, right? Yeah. You want to get rid of them. Red blood cells every 120 days. Heart muscle cells every 10 years. Heart endothelial cells every 6 years. Isn't it interesting? But we know that research shows that the whole body is replaced every 7 years, right? So it's very interesting when you look at these numbers and you begin to think about that whole big question that we raised, that Simone loves, of epigenetics. And what is epigenetics? It's that key issue of how we get from DNA to proteins that are the building structure of our body and back. Because this is all about expression. And so, the good cells that you had when you were in your 20s have long gone because of your bad habits. That's why it takes 20 years for chronic illness to come in. Because the good cells were being screwed up as they were making copies. And by the time you're 60, you're caught up with all the bad cells. Now you have how much time? 20 to 40 years. Right? Or to 35 years to try and work out all that bad cells out of your body. Right? Because of that whole issue of epigenetics. When the cells are already affected, we have to change them. So the transformation that we talk about here, reversal, is at the heart of the cellular transformation itself. Is that making sense? Any questions on this?
That's very exciting that we can do that, because
yes.
for so long people thought that
couldn't do
this was your destiny,
yes.
and there's nothing you
exactly.
can do.
And so, to add to this issue about the cells being transformed or being changed, is the core is that if you really change your lifestyle, it impacts your cellular architecture. There's impact on it. That's why diets and all these short-term things fail. They are not achieving epigenetic changes, because it's the epigenetic changes that really lead to the longer-term transformation. Welcome, guys. Come sit over here. Beate, are you both taking treatment first? All right. So get Elizabeth ready. Beate, come sit down. They can do yours later on. All right. So where were we again? So we are going to go on this journey of the heart. I already just showed you that your heart is what's going to kill you first, right? Before anything else, right? It's the big thing. So it is very important that you actually pay attention to it. And therefore, if we are looking at replacement, that's what we really want to look at, okay? So I'm going to take you on a journey now. So because you are like my gifted friends, we actually have handbooks that we're going to use today. So we're going to walk through this handbook because I want to take you to take it home and it becomes your guide. Yeah, that's for Elizabeth. Yeah. All right, so let's go page 1 of the book. Page 1. You have a copy? No. So we are looking at a table of contents. We're going to look at our cardiometabolic risk. We're going to look at stress and cardiometabolics. I'm on this page. We're going to look at diet and cardiometabolic disease. We're going to look at the environment and cardiometabolic disease. We're going to look at exercise, targeted nutrients, and then we'll talk about some conclusions, okay? So let's go to page. Now we want to talk about metabolic risk, understanding our cardiometabolic risk. So there is a whole range . I thought we gave that already. Huh? Okay. All right. Oh, okay. All right. So let's look at some of the big biomarkers that you need to actually know. So for people who've done the Boston test, we have the result, the sample reports here. I'll give that to you. But I want to focus just on some critical clinical biomarkers that you need to understand and know your numbers. So when they say knowing your numbers, you need to know these numbers, right? So we are looking at glucose levels. Number one is glucose levels, right? It has to be at those levels. When we look at HbA1c, we all know what A1c is, right? It's the indicator of insulin resistance, how your body is managing the metabolism of sugar, right? And the pre-diabetes, which in most reports show as being green at 5.7, is actually pre-diabetes. So let's just talk about that. I want everybody to understand that number really clearly. All right? That number says it's 5.7 to 6.5. They're calling that pre-diabetes. So let's talk about anybody who at 50 is at 5.5. You're already in a big problem. Because by the time you're 5.5, your pancreatic islets already lost about 40% of their functionality. What are the pancreatic islets? Let's explore that. This is something you really need to know. Your pancreatic islets is where insulin is produced. And why do they die? They die from too much sugar in your blood. And therefore, the pancreas has to produce a lot of insulin to take this sugar out of the blood. And that overworking is very destructive. You understand? It's a very, very important issue. That's why diabetes is tied to heart disease, and it's a very big problem. Why? The sugar is in the blood. And when insulin cannot pull the sugar out of the blood enough, what does the blood do? The body starts transforming the sugar into fat, and the fat then sits in the arteries and in the veins. So it is the beginning of atherosclerosis, right? The hardening and the deposit of fats in the arterial blood distribution system, which then leads to what? High blood pressure, aneurysms, and strokes, right? So that's why the metabolism issue is connected to the circulatory issue of the heart. The two go hand in hand. And so if you want cleaner pipes, don't eat sugar. That's what it said. If you want cleaner circulatory system, don't eat sugar. So it's not like it's an optional issue here. The issue is that if your A1C is already at above 5, you already have insulin resistant issues. And that is a big problem. Okay? So that's a big number, and we're going to look at all these numbers as we go across, okay? So look at the spectrum of illnesses that really come with this overall risk. We have pre-diabetes, or we have what we call metabolic syndrome, or we have type 2 diabetes, or we have dyslipidemia. All are complications of each other. Like Prasant and I, when we work with patients around this and we're interpreting their biomarkers, these are names that we have given, but these names don't actually mean anything. Because for every person, when we look at your biomarkers, it gives different indications of where you are, right? So I'm going to ask question time.
And all biomarkers are internally linked, so they are associated with each other. So if we see one biomarker, that is not just one biomarker.
I know, you get what he's saying. We'll talk about that later on. That each clinical biomarker, you see, the system, the body doesn't work independently of each other, like the heart, the immune system, the muscular system, they are all working in conjunction. So the minute you have your A1C is high, it disrupts so many other things in the body. Big disruptions, right? And so, yeah, even the brain, your brain cannot remember. That's why arthritis, and Alzheimer's and all of those things are also linked to diabetes, right? There's a form of Alzheimer's that is linked to diabetes and dementia and Parkinson's and all of them. Okay, next page. These are two words that you need to understand. This page, guys, with the blue box, this page. These are two words that you really need to understand. So let's take the first one. I know English is challenging in a multi-language culture. The first one is physiological resilience. I love this word a lot. It says that it is the capacity of your body to immediately respond to changes that it needs, right? For example, if the lion stepped in this room, how many people are going to be able to fight the lion or run away as quickly as possible? Soul has chosen to fight for us while we run, right? So that is really our response system. How many people, right? Because we all have the ability to fight or to run or to fly, right? Flight or fight, right? And so that our ability to do that, you want to sit here or sit there? All right. So our ability to respond is based on our physiological resilience, but something else underneath supports that. For example, if we were going to be running all day, we don't have enough capacity to run all day, except if we have built the second thing that we call, guys, pay attention, except we build what we call metabolic reserve, right? That is the long-term capacity of your body to withstand repeated changes, right? And what are those repeated changes? Demand on our system, demand for performance, demand, right? And over time, both of those things are depleted. So a lot of people ask me the question, how long am I going to take nutrients? Well, until you die, right? Because you're building your metabolic reserve and your physiological resilience. These two things are required when they are needed, right? When the body needs energy, it needs both. So you cannot say, when I start feeling better, I'm going to stop. Because we don't know when you're going to get the next infection. It doesn't matter, Per. We don't know when you're going to get the next infection. We don't know when you're going to be exposed. We don't know when you're going to shake somebody's hands and they have the flu. Or they have some of these interesting illnesses that even hang in air conditioning systems. So because we don't know, don't worry, Per, it's all right. When we don't know when we're going to need things, we need to build that capacity, right? And this capacity doesn't just come only from nutrients. It comes from all the things that we're going to talk about, the 7 issues about lifestyle. So that's why sleep is so important. That's why detoxing is very important. That's why de-stressing and meditation is very important. That's why eating the right diet is very important. That's why having your minerals, your micronutrients is very important, right? That's why understanding your genetic risk is very important, so you do not subject yourself to unnecessary risk that begins to reduce your physiological resilience and your metabolic reserve. So if you catch the flu all the time, your response to fight that flu in your immune system is part of your physiological resilience. But over time, it drains your metabolic reserve. That's the problem about continuous infection, like UTI, like flus. They lead to long-term illness, and that's why a lot of people think, I took medication. Well, but you are not addressing that underlying resistance that the body requires to survive in an infection-driven world. We can't go clean the world, except you can build a bubble around yourself. Is this important, guys? This is very important. Are we clear about this? So I need for everybody to understand those two terms. Your metabolic reserve, that's why you exercise, to build resilience and reserve. Because on the day it comes for to run, we may have to run a marathon, 26 miles. How many people are going to make it, right? Or if a bear came into the room right now, in my culture, the men are going to defend and the women can run, right? Sorry, I forget we're in America where the men, whoever runs first, gets out of the room, right? Like they did in Colorado during the shooting. Okay, let's go to the next page. So they create these three groups, right? It's good to choose the group where you belong. We have created a very different profile of classification. We've created 4 groups, and those 4 groups cover a very interesting profile with regard to the metabolic reserve and the physiological resilience. So we have the first group, which is vitality. The second group are people who think they're healthy. The third group are people who are distressed. And the fourth group are people who have disorder. What's disorder? That means that the doctor has said you have some illness. What's distress? Is when you know something is wrong, but you really don't know what it is, right? What's healthy is people who like, yeah, my doctor said everything is green, but it's typically bullshit. And then these are the people who are like in optimal health. These are the people who wake up in the morning and say, okay, today I need to run 10 miles. I need to drink my juice. I need to, right? They wake up with vitality. And most of the people who have their little kids, that's why they tire the hell out of us, because they have vitality, their primal energy. They came with that. As you age, this is the impact of aging. That's something we cannot fight. Aging takes you towards disorder. That's just a fact. That's why we cannot live forever. Because aging takes us towards disorder. Plus our genetic risks. Plus our environment. Those 3 things are taking us towards disorder. So the fight to stay, to have a long and healthy life, is to fight in this direction. That's the fight. It's a big fight. So you cannot just sit still and be healthy. No, because you're fighting against these forces. So we call them stressors. So you are fighting against all of these things, and that's what your physiological resilience and your metabolic reserve helps you to do, to fight from these stressors that are pushing you towards disorder. People don't get sick because they did something bad. I know in the old days we used to think that it was punishment from God, right? People get sick because of the underlying genetic risk, because of aging, and because of the environment, which would include their lifestyle and the things that they have done. And some of it, they were not even aware of what they were doing, right? Drinking Coke continuously, smoking, not exercising, eating sweets, being stressed, right? Some of us actually enjoy being stressed. We call ourselves what? Workaholics, right, Simone? We need to be occupied because in some ways it defines us. That's why I went into that thing at the beginning. What is our reason for being? Very, very important aspect of it. Okay, let's continue on this exercise. So you want to find out, when we look at your biomarkers here, this is the classifications that we have across your biomarkers. And we know that very few people fall in these 2 zones, which means that your biomarkers are all green. Very few people. Have we found anybody? No. Even the people who are 20 years old. very few people have all green biomarkers across the 300, 400 or 500 biomarkers that we track. Most people are here and here. So if we did a distribution, you'll find out this is where most people are. And that means that in some aspect of their life, things are not working. Whether it's sleep, whether it's pain, whether it's focus, whether it's stress, in some aspect of their life, something is dysfunctional, or there is a significant physiological imbalance. And so this is really the big focus that we are taking in this series of workshops, to really focus on one aspect of it, because having the knowledge then allows you to take action. So let's go and look at the metabolic continuum on the next page. This page. Okay? So let's look at chronic inflammation and acute inflammation. For most people who attend this class, we've already talked about this. Inflammation is a necessary response that we all have. The problem is the chronic inflammation. And that's why one of the things that we sell a lot here is called SPM. And SPM is something that reduces that inflammation, right? Because if you have pain, you really want to take the pain down, right? So a typical acute inflammation will look like that, and chronic inflammation will look like that, right? It's very important that you understand. So there's a trigger, this is the modulation, this is the actual inflammation, and that's the modulation. What's the modulation? It's the resolution of the inflammation. So you get pain, the pain is resolved, and it comes down. That's typical inflammation. In chronic inflammation, there is the trigger, and it is unresolved. So what SPM does is that it tries to resolve this, not indefinitely, but you have to go find the underlying triggers of inflammation itself. None of us can address all the triggers for inflammation. Why? Because we live in an environment that is already contaminated and toxic. Except you go live inside an oxygen bubble, right? Where there's no bacteria, there's nothing. So we'll always have inflammation. So it's important that you dampen this inflammation and you address the underlying source of the inflammation itself. You need to attack it with both, right? And we have some products here that do that. Okay? Let's go to the next page. So inflammation in itself, let me just read that last line before we turn the page. Chronic inflammation is commonly the cause of cardiometabolic risk. In the beginning of this lecture today, I said there were two big problems, right? Inflammation and mitochondrial dysfunction. Okay, mitochondrial dysfunction, big problem. It is at the core of most illnesses, and really for cancer also, because your mitochondria, which is the source of the energy powerhouse, begins to die, right? It's like a battery on your phone dying. That's what mitochondrial dysfunction is. And then it creates a lot of reactive oxygen species, the oxidative thing. That's why you need the antioxidants to remove all of that. God created a very, I'm saying God because there is no way this could happen by accident.
It's not through chaos.
Yeah, this is not through chaos, guys. The more deep you go into the biology of this thing, there's no way it could have just, the Krebs cycle could have just happened out of chaos, right? It is very clear that it was designed so well. Last night I couldn't sleep because I was thinking about the mathematics of creating an 8-factor model. Sorry. So people who did finance here would know the Markov model of how you calculate risk and return in the markets. It's a 4-factor model. But if we start calculating lifestyle, and the compounding is like an 8 or 9 factor model. It's really complex math, but I was thinking that I need to try and solve that. Anyway, let me go further before I get you guys lost. It's some deep math. All right, so people who look at what the inflammation risk looks like. So this is the challenge we have with inflammation. A lot of people think that inflammation means pain. Pain is one of inflammation outcomes, but it is not the biggest one. The biggest challenge to inflammation is that you're not even aware of it, that you're inflamed. Instead, you see signs like you're gassing, something is wrong, my stomach, bloating, right? Cannot sleep well. Those are signs that something is wrong. Those are big inflammatory signals. That the big place of inflammation is not happy, right? You ate something bad, right? And typically, if you eat something bad, what should you do, Elizabeth? Very important comment. The minute your stomach is upset or you feel nausea, go and throw up. It's very, very important because the body is saying something is wrong. Take it out, right?
Don't eat grass like that.
Yes, my grandparents even taught us, you go put your finger down and bring it out. Put your finger down your throat and bring it out, and it will all come out. And the minute it comes out, you need to drink a lot of water so that more of it can come out, and then you can sleep. Very important, guys. A friend of mine died in the hostel when we were in university because he ate bad sardine. He opened that sardine the night before he ate it, and somebody said to him, I don't like the smell of that sardine. And well, you know, we're students and you're poor. It's like, it's my last sardine, I'm going to eat it. He died. And so, sometimes we don't pay attention. I have a very amazing nose. I can smell when food is bad, even before I open the pot. So you really need to be careful. There's a video my friend sent me of a whole family in Cameroon that died yesterday because they ate poison food. 9 people died after dinner. They're still trying to find out what was in the food that killed them. So a lot of us really, and you know, we've outsourced our food systems to other people. You know how much risk that is? That we eat what other people cook without even knowing how they cooked it and the hygienic conditions. So it's really very important. Even if you're eating pho and you're putting the vegetable in, the water needs to be really, really hot. Very hot. You can't eat pho when the water is not boiling. That way it kills the vegetables and the meats and all those things that are being added into your pho, right? Okay. It kills bacteria, yes. It kills the bacteria. Okay? That's when I go to Vietnam, I do not eat vegetables that are not cooked outside. So my rule is that I do not eat uncooked food outside, especially when I travel.
But in America too?
Huh?
In America as well?
In America, rarely, yes. I'll eat salad outside.
Okay.
Yes, because I'll preferably make mine. But when I eat pho, I'll put all of it in the boiling water. Yeah, it's very, very it's really the biggest risk area for salmonella and a lot of other things. Because don't forget that even when we buy organic, they are doing composting. And composts are rich in bacteria, right? It's a good thing, right? They're rich in bacteria. Compost is rich in bacteria. Oh, they cover it so we shouldn't see it? Oh, so it shouldn't go cold. Okay.
No, it's the light. It can't get...
Did they put the glutathione in? Okay, well, anyway. All right. So let's look at the next picture. Any questions so far? You're a very quiet class. Is it because you prefer me talking? Thank you. I like that feedback. Simon? Rick, how are we doing? Good. Thank you. Okay, let's go to the next page. We are looking here at what causes insulin resistance and what causes insulin recovery, right? I'm not going to spend a lot of time there. Insulin resistance is the whole process of how we have glucose it absorbed into tissues. That's the normal process. When there is insulin resistance, the glucose stays in the blood. Most of us have insulin resistance because of the bullshit we've been doing most of our lives, right? But what can cause insulin recovery? Physical activities, reducing toxins or detox, plant-based diet, weight management, meditation, right? Finding something that's calm and settling to us, right? And then look at the things that also increase insulin resistance. Lack of sleep. That's the big problem for women. Lack of sleep.
We're a nation under stress.
Yes. Sleep is one of our biggest challenges. I mean, some of us like me, I'm just sleep. Most men are easy. Women are challenged by sleep, right? And then nutrient deficiency. How do we know we are nutrient deficient? There is no signal that comes up and says, oh, you are nutrient deficient. The body begins to struggle with that thing we talked about, the epigenetics. It's trying to create new cells, and it doesn't have the nutrients. So what does you think it's going to do? It creates deficient cells. And those deficient cells is what we call epigenetic. They are designed to be inefficient because they were prepared without enough material for building. You understand? That is really at the core of epigenetics. Okay? Any questions on that? Okay. So how many people here understand all their lab values? Their lab values from your... Can you pass this round, please? So everybody should have that, or at least you've been tested on that. Where is Prasan? Prasan, where is he? Is he with the patient? Oh, restroom? Okay. He went to restroom at the right time, I guess, or the wrong time. So let's look at the numbers. Let's look at the map. The reason why we use Boston mostly, I like using Boston, because Boston gives a very, very comprehensive look at your clinical biomarkers. Boston is actually also one of the most expensive among them. It actually has a lot of proprietary testing, and it looks at your lipids. So let's look at what lipids are. Who can tell me what lipids are?
Fats.
What are fats? What is fat?
Lipids.
I like that answer. So just like Simone was saying and Elizabeth, lipids are cholesterol and fats that your body needs to function. And these test results will tell you if you have too much cholesterol or too much fat, and what kind you have is dangerous, and if you're at the risk of forming blockages. You know, the amazing thing about the design by God is that you can have too much of a good thing and not enough of a good thing. Or you could have too much of a bad thing and not enough of a bad thing. Isn't that interesting? So your body is not all good
Or all bad.
or all bad. It needs a balance of both. It's very interesting, right? Because even when we're looking at your bacterial architecture in your microbiome, we need some bad bacteria. We need the bad boys there. Not too much of them, because then they cause a lot. Then they start rioting like in Hong Kong, right? Which the Chinese are going to deal with, right? So you don't want too many bad boys because they're going to cause a riot. But you need some bad boys. They help. They keep us awake.
That's on our toes.
They keep us on our toes, right? Is it paining? You have pain? You're good?
I'm okay.
Oh, all right. Okay, because if you pain, let's call them. Okay. And then it looks at your Inflammation. So what are the markers of inflammation? Who knows what are the clinical markers for inflammation? Not my staff. What? No, 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 no. I said your clinical biomarkers for inflammation. Huh? I didn't hear that. The SED rate. No. How many people have been told about their level of inflammation? So where do you read it? What is that number called?
Oh, it's the red.
No, that's not what it is. No, no, that's not a sign of inflammation. The biomarkers for inflammation. So hold on, don't show them yet. It means that when Prasad was taking you through your numbers, you didn't pay attention. It's one of the most important numbers on this report. Then what is it? Tell me. There's a column there called inflammation tests. I know. So can you open it? Here, look at it. Inflammation tests. All right? It's important, right, that you understand all those numbers. Prasad, stand up, come in front, and talk to them about these numbers. Come this way, Prasad. Walk them through these numbers as you normally do when they get their test.
Okay.
Loud.
So HSCRP, high sensitive C-reactive protein. It is a protein. Whenever you have inflammation, that number goes high.
So the body, but calm down. We're not rushing. There's no train to catch. All right. So HS reactive CRP is the protein that is produced when there's a lot of inflammation, and so that is a big marker that the body, and so the body produces that protein so it can be deployed to the area of inflammation. That's why it's in the blood, because the blood is carrying that protein to the area of inflammation. And so it's not that pay attention, it's not that the protein is bad. It's just that when it's high, it means there's a lot of inflammation that the body is responding to. Is that making sense?
Yes.
It's not that the CRP is bad, but it's an indication that the body is fighting a war. Do you get the? You get it?
Yeah.
So is that food protein? Is that
It's a protein.
no.
It's an amino acid.
Okay, it's what you eat.
No, it's not what you eat. It's an amino acid. It's the body produces that. Yes. All right. And we don't want to go into the biochemistry of that. It's too complicated. Yeah, but that's a good question. Yeah, but it comes from the proteins that you eat. The body takes the peptides and amino acids and constructs this reactive protein. It's the protein that is sent like a shield to go and try and modulate inflammation. Okay, what's the next one?
LPPLA2 activity. It indicates the vascular inflammation. Whenever there is a vascular inflammation in the walls, it will indicate this number will go high.
Okay, let's talk about vascular inflammation. So vascular inflammation is a big sign of whether you are going to have an eruption. No, not stroke, because most of us have fat floating in our blood. It's whether it depends also the kind of stenosis that you have, if it's mixed or if it's soft. And that vascular inflammation is very dangerous when you have a soft one, because if it breaks, then no, not that you have a stroke, it will cause a blockage, then you have a stroke.
There may be a genetic reason as well. Few people are having tendency of having that.
Yes. So this is very important markers, guys. So I want you to know them. So next time, if you're not coming to my clinic and you're looking at your blood results, you want to really look at it. What am I, and why am I paying so much attention? Actually, this is more important than your lipids, because the inflammation, as I said, and the mitochondrial dysfunction are really the big disease drivers, right?
So to do the fasting test, you have to fast.
Yes, because the glucose levels are very important. We want to know what your fasting glucose performance is, because if you eat, what happens? we are seeing a different performance. We are seeing a body responding to glucose in the system. You understand? Or the blood's response plus insulin levels to deal with digestion. But if you're fasting, we want to see what that performance level is, which is a chronic level.
Yes.
Right?
And for chemistry as well.
Sorry? We can answer that question. It covers some aspects of it, not a complete aspect. Okay? Right? Yara, you should be answering those questions, right? You're the one who runs. Okay. All right. Are they asking questions online? Okay. Well, get somebody to call. If you're going to call, go call somewhere. Okay. Then, no, you didn't finish. You didn't finish. Why are you running away?
Oh, okay.
The fibrinogen and
Yes. Fibrinogen. So,
fibrinogen is the fiber thing that is like if there is a wound or something, it's like fibroblast and things. It comes to provide the infrastructure for repair. So if it's too high, it's also a big sign. Go ahead.
and whenever you have injury, this is the one thing you should see for. Like whenever you have cardiac injury, like apart from HSCRP, it takes a longer time to raise, but fibrinogen, it immediately shoots up. So whenever you have some heart attack or something and if you got admitted to hospital, you first fibrinogen they will check.
Yes, because the body is trying to repair. Yeah.
There is difference in gender.
Obviously. And genetics, yes. There's difference in age, in gender, in ethnicity, in genetic, all of that. But the point, well, good question. Let's answer that question. Did you hear what question she asked? Is there a difference in the ranges? Yes. Okay. She's asking a big statistical question that I struggle with explaining to a lot of people. Okay?
Let me check. Oh.
Thank you. Go sit down. Go sit down. Go sit down. Go sit down. Let me explain this. So let's look at the statistics of biomarkers. And I'm going to take one that people get very, very concerned about. Blood pressure.
Thank you. Yes.
So in statistical measurement, pay attention guys, in statistical measurement, we are looking at the population. Within the population, we have subsets like women or men or children, and then we have the individual. Right? That's how statistic works. And in statistics, we don't deal with the individual. It's too difficult. So we deal with the population. And typically we deal with a subset of the population, right? A representative subset. So when they take all the blood pressures across women in America, they come out with a range. It's a population range. All the equipment are configured that way. The equipment, when it says your blood pressure is 120, it is checking that against the population database. It is not your actual blood pressure. Is that clear?
Wait.
I want you people.
No,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
actually my actual blood pressure, but the reading is the
Well, yes,
no.
but what you are seeing is the reading.
computation is the reading.
Yeah, what you're seeing is the reading that is comparing it calibrated to the population,
Yes.
right? And so that what we call a point statistic, say this is 120, this is 140, and this is 160, right? We know that now 140 is the new measure for high blood pressure, right? So if it is 120, right, and some people are at 110, right? I'm just giving you ranges. This point statistic, that's what we call it. It's a measurement in time. It's called a point statistic. It's actually irrelevant. It's irrelevant. It doesn't mean anything. Because if we took your blood pressure 10 minutes later, it's going to be different.
Yeah.
If we took you another 10 minutes different, it's going to be different. So it doesn't mean anything.
So how do we...
Hold up, Mrs. Calm down. She wants
blood
to-
pressure.
Yeah, that just raised my blood pressure right there.
So, in statistics, it is important that we take the second and the third measure. So, if we take the second one and it's 120, I mean the first one is 120, we take the second one and it's 130, and we take the third one and it's 110, right? It's giving us a trend, right, of variability. And that's why they might want to say, when you go for more extreme blood testing, right, or blood pressure testing, they want to do a supine, a standing, a sitting, and also the stress test. That's what cardiologists do. Because now they really want to pinpoint what your blood pressure is like in these different ranges and when you're on that machine running, right? They would ask you to run for 15 minutes and they can see your blood, the heart rate variability, which is the more important measure. Okay? That's why it's important that you focus on heart rate variability, because over time we want to see what is the average of that heart rate. That's the more important measure. Is that making sense?
Yes.
Why is it not making sense?
No, I'm just.
Can I get some water, please? Or I have some here. Yeah, no, Kim, you have a question. I want to
I
hear.
was saying, because I took my blood pressure today and it was really, really good, and you just kill it right there. Yeah, I'm just saying.
It's a 30-day.
So should I take
It's
30-day
30-day
drugs?
No, it could be that today you're just feeling really good. And that's, I'm sorry to bust your bubble.
Bust my bubble right
No, I really, because this is a very important, everybody talks about blood pressure. It's very important that you really understand what blood pressure is. And it's a very deceptive measure. And I don't want people deceived by it. It's a very, very complicated measure. And you really need to, if you're having problems with your blood pressure, you really need to make sure you pay attention to this issue of heart rate variability. And even if your doctor has not recommended it, it's good to do the stress test at least once a year. Because the stress test means that we're actually measuring your heart performance under stress. And that EKG measurement is a very, very important measurement of your performance and how your heart performs. So it's a very, very, if you haven't done one, did we do an EKG on you? Can we get heart on EKG done? Did we do heart smart on you? Okay, we didn't do. Can we schedule them for that? So that, yeah.
So if you go to the gym, get on the treadmill, and you're cranking up your heart rate, let's say you get it up there 120, 130, whatever, and then you go and take your blood pressure. Do you need to take it while it's doing it, or if your pulse is still,
It's fine. Yeah,
Whenever you take it.
And whenever you take it, it's fine.
Okay.
It just provides context.
So if you have a very similar blood pressure at, say, 70, that you have at 120, then you're doing good.
Yes, because if your body keeps the blood pressure constant, even at stress, that's actually very good. Yeah, it's people who have good vitality. So a marathon runner's blood pressure at rest and when they just finish a marathon is almost the same.
Blood pressure sometimes goes down. My heart rate goes.
Yeah, well, it could. Yeah, that's not bad. Yeah, but so it's the constancy.
Very close.
Yeah, the consistency that we're looking at. That's why I just said heart rate variability is the more important measure. It's how is your body coping with the variability of life. If it stays constant, that's a good thing. If it dips, has too many troughs and peaks, then that is a problem.
So, I think the other interesting thing about this statistic is the fact that the pharmaceutical industry has brought it down further and further and said, if you have 120, now you have hypertension.
Well,
And lowering it down so that people then go, okay, now I need drugs.
well, hold on. No. So it's not a deliberate deception. It's because Americans are getting more obese.
Yeah, so the statistic from the population.
Exactly.
says that.
Americans are getting more obese, and therefore they are getting settled into lower blood pressures with obesity. And being right, so that is now becoming a problem. Because if you're overweight and your blood pressure is 120, you still have risk.
Yeah.
Is that clear? Because you're having the vascular deposits, and that's going to cause, and if you have a soft deposits, that increases your risk.
And you can see low heart rate as well.
Yes. Yeah, the low heart rate also becomes a problem. Yeah. Okay? So was that good discussion on that?
Yes.
All right. Okay. So, and that's really where it goes on that next page. Look at this page.
Yeah.
No, in the book. We're back to the book. I apologize.
Page 11.
Page 11. So it begins to talk about systolic. Okay, let's test here. Because as my patients or customers, you need. So, what's the meaning of systolic blood pressure? Systolic.
I don't know. As far as I know,
Fiction.
it's the number above.
And the one on the bottom.
It's the one that when it's moving.
It's going out.
Yeah.
All right? The heart is pushing out. And then the diastolic, it's receiving the blood back in. So there are two chambers in the heart. Prasant, can you look, I think on my chair, you'll find the map of the heart. It's important that I show you that. So it's important you understand the two numbers. That's why one is stronger, so pay attention. That's why is the one pushing out stronger than the one receiving it?
Because it's carrying the nutrients.
Why?
To get the blood out.
Correct. See all this, it has to pump across all of this. And it also has to carry nutrients, our physiological resilience. If you're running, it has to carry the nutrients to where it's needed. And then the lower one, it's like the trek home.
It's pulling
It's like the trek home. That's why when you run, you have lactic acid concentration, because the blood is not carrying all that waste quickly back. Okay? So it's important you understand the two, the systolic and the diastolic. It's okay, Prasan. My desk is crazy to find anything.
What happens if the blood coming back is higher number?
Oh, then you have a big problem. No, then it means that there is a problem with the heart muscle. That's a very big problem. Typically, it's people who have a valve issue. There is no way. It's rare to find somebody having a higher diastolic than a systolic.
Yeah.
It's almost impossible.
Usually the
Yes.
systolic's always high. That's why we read it.
To receive your blood, heart has to pump.
Yeah, hold on. You said what?
When we read it on the subject, it's an indicator that there's something wrong. So you have
But it is rare for somebody's diastolic to be higher than the systolic. No, you mean it's high.
High.
Oh, okay.
High.
Sorry,
That's
it's
right.
just
There's
high.
difference.
Yes, okay, sorry. I was like, you're saying it's higher than the systolic. Then they'll be in like reverse mode.
it's higher than the range that's expected.
Okay, so BMI. This is the big measure. Mine, I am overweight. I am 29. I used to be 32. So I'm slowly moving into overweight, and then I'll move into normal. But you know, they say below 18. Most marathon runners are below 18. They're around 16, 17. And that's the reason why they can really win the marathon, because their body is optimized.
Very
Yeah, very efficient conversion engine. Their metabolic reserve and their physiological resistance is at peak performance. And that comes from training. So just because you're thin doesn't mean you have it, okay? So you have to train to have it.
Yeah, 'cause you don't have muscle.
Yeah, okay, so you have to train to have it. So just being thin doesn't give it to you. Okay, so I was seeing you saying, I got that one.
Wait, but I have a question though. If you have a low BMI, doesn't mean that you're healthy.
No, it does not.
That's why I just
It's just one of the clinical markers. There is a high probability that you're healthy.
If you've got everything else in line.
It's a very important
You
probability.
have a low BMI, but you still don't have enough nutrients.
No, no, okay, let's be clear. Because God in his design was clear. You have to be in the range. If it's lower than 18 and you're not an athlete, there is a problem.
That's what I meant.
Yes.
That's what I meant, yes.
If you're not if it's lower than 18 and you're malnourished, yes.
Yeah, that's what I, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, you're malnourished. Yes. Okay, it has to be above 18. And it's like when we look at body lean mass and percentage of body fat, all those things have to be within range. Okay? So let's look at blood sugar and the numbers we're talking about. So the normal range is really 70 to 90.